Hi, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is RegWatch by RegulatorWatch.com. Heaven forbid that you or someone you love suffers an injury from an automobile accident in the province of Ontario. Besides the immediate pain and suffering, your long-term physical recovery and rehabilitation may be at risk, due in no small part to the heavy hand of an Ontario regulator that appears more interested in promulgating red tape than in patient care. Since 2019, over 20,000 health service providers, the physiotherapists, chiropractors, and massage therapists who treat people injured in car accidents have fallen under the control of the Financial Services Regulatory Authority, or Fizzra, which replaced the now defunct Financial Services Commission of Ontario. You might be asking, why is the business and practice of these critical health service providers subject to oversight by a financial services regulator? The answer is simple: insurance. Fizzra regulates the auto insurance industry, and health claims from auto accidents make up a vast majority of billings. In the last fiscal year, there were over 54,000 claimants who accessed treatment from health service providers following a motor vehicle accident, totaling just over $643 million in adjudicated invoices processed through Ontario's health claims for auto insurance system. The HCI system is the clearinghouse for processing claims and invoicing based on listed expenses, i.e., the goods and services provided by regulated health professionals that are approved and listed in the Statutory Accident Benefit Schedule of the Ontario Insurance Act. Joining us today to discuss the challenges facing health service providers in Ontario is Anthony Grande, a registered physiotherapist with a Bachelor of Science in Physical Therapy and owner of Focus Physiotherapy, a chain of clinics located in the Toronto area. Anthony, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Before we dive into the details of what's going on, first please share with our viewers a bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks, Brent. Well, I'm a physiotherapist, and I've been practicing physiotherapy since 1996. I've practiced in numerous jurisdictions in Canada and the US, and I think helping people is an amazing thing to do. One of the best parts of the profession is talking to and encouraging people to participate in their care and giving them guidance and treatment that improves their life and just helps them recover from numerous types of injury, whether it's car accidents, sports injury, work accidents, or just wear and tear from getting older. It's really rewarding to do what I do.
Anthony, why is physical therapy so important for accident victims?
Well, physical therapy is important for accident victims as it helps people recover from their injuries that they've sustained and regain their physical abilities that they've lost as a result. Physiotherapy, it involves the use of various techniques such as exercise, stretches, manual therapy, and education to restore the mobility, reduce the pains, and improve the strength and flexibility that they've lost after the accident. It's so important for accident victims to undergo physiotherapy to prevent the long-term complications such as chronic pain, muscle weakness, decreased range of motion. And with less chronic pains, there's less opioid use, there are less mental health issues. People after an accident are hurt in so many different areas that they really need an intervention by a healthcare professional to help them recover.
Yeah, well, I know it's been very important for my recovery from more than one accident and injury. Let me ask you, are chiropractors and massage therapists also a part of the rehabilitative therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. All healthcare professionals have a role. Chiropractors and massage therapists are important in the rehabilitation after an accident. Chiropractors also, they specialize in the diagnosis and treatment of musculoskeletal disorders. They use non-invasive techniques such as spinal manipulation and adjustment. They also, are actively involved in a patient's recovery. Massage therapists use their hands and other tools. They manipulate the soft tissues of the body, including the muscles, the tendons. They help reduce pain, improve circulation. Together, all of us, chiros, physios, massage therapists, we provide a comprehensive rehabilitation approach to these people that were injured in a car accident. And often that's what's really required. They didn't just fall down. They were involved in some significant accidents.
Neck, back, spine, knees. There's so many different areas that are vital that get so screwed up in these kinds of accidents. Anthony, in the lead to this episode, I mentioned that an accident victim's long-term physical recovery and rehabilitation may be at risk in the province of Ontario. Is that right, and why?
That's absolutely correct, Brent. We're burning out. It's that simple. We're burning out. There's so many bureaucratic hurdles. There's so much red tape to deliver care. There's redundant licensing. There's invoicing complexities. We want to deliver care. We want to get people better. But the paperwork is so onerous that we're treating, and then we're burning out because of the administrative requirements, the redundant regulation. It's just it's coming to a point where people are just saying, I want to do something else. And people are leaving the practice of physiotherapy. They're leaving the practice altogether. They're going into different jobs. They're shutting down their clinics. They're retiring early. So yeah, they're burning out.
Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, but the largest segment of patients for your type of services comes from auto accidents and basically from auto insurance.
Generally speaking, it's sort of an even split between people who get in car accidents, people who get in work accidents, and people who get in sports accidents or just hurt themselves through wear and tear. We have three primary groups. You have the auto accidents patient, you have the workplace injury patients, and we have just the general sports and wear and tear patients. So it's a pretty significant component of our patient base. And unfortunately, it's a component of our patient base that's actually become more complicated, even though the injuries themselves are the same. People have been injured in car accidents since there have been cars, and actually cars protect people a lot more. But over the course of the last 2 decades, the red tape to treat people involved in car accidents has grown substantially. The bureaucracy, and all that combined with less and less remuneration for that one sector does have negative impacts on the service and the service delivery and patient care for every other sector as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we try to paint a picture for our viewers of what exactly the problem is here. And we're starting to get to it. And one of the things that, this whole thing starts with is what's called the guideline. What is the guideline, and why is it a problem?
Well, the guideline that you're referring to, I believe, is the professional services guideline. And that professional services guideline is set by the Financial Services Regulator. Today, it's the Financial Services Regulator of Ontario, and it sets the fees that insurance companies pay health service providers. Now, these fees are actually less than they were in 1996, currently today, but the current fees actually haven't been adjusted since 2014.
So basically then, what the government or the insurance companies pay for your services, there's not been a raise or any adjustment to inflation for 10 years.
That's correct. There hasn't been any raise for 10 years. But in those 10 years, there's been an increase in licensing fees. So we pay more to treat people that are involved in car accidents. The requirements are to submit an invoice have become increasingly complex, and that makes it difficult for us to operate, plain and simple.
Well, so how can your industry, human beings, live in Ontario that are professionals and health service providers, cost of houses go up, gas goes up, food goes up. I mean, we've all experienced that, but it happens normally. You don't need to have the extraordinary inflation that we've seen over the last 18 months. It's just regular old inflation. So there's no mechanism by which that health service providers in Ontario would be able to receive an adjusted increase in rates?
No, there isn't. It's I hate to use this word, but it's decreed pretty much by the Financial Services Regulatory Authority. They set the rates, and I don't believe there is a mechanism at all. There's not a mechanism for these rates to be reviewed unless the Financial Services Regulator wants to review them. I've looked into it. I've asked if there's a mechanism. I haven't been told that there is a mechanism. And I believe there was a recent news article that asked that question, and they said it's not on the horizon. So I really don't know what to tell you. When you're in the business of healthcare and when you're a regulated health professional, we do a lot to keep the lights on. We also do a lot to provide the care to our patients, because they're our patients. They're not our customers. They are our patients. There's a different obligation that we have to them. And that means that, when the lights are off in the clinic, the lights are usually on in the back room in an office somewhere, and we're doing all this paperwork. And that's when we try to get it done so that we have enough time to treat people when they come in the next day.
So I'd like to unpack this a little bit more. Based on our conversations that we've had, I understand that there's also an issue with a mandate on who you must try to bill for your services first. Describe that for us.
So in Ontario, when a person's involved in a car accident, the first insurance that a person has to go through that pays for their treatment from a car accident is their work insurance. So the insurance that they pay for their glasses that they get from their employer, that's the first payee. So as a clinic owner, we would have to submit to that insurance first. Often people have more than one insurance, a husband and wife, or, two partners. They'll have two insurance policies. So we'll submit to the first, then the difference to the second, and then finally the auto insurer will be the third. Now, it sounds complicated to explain because it is. So I'll give you a simple example. If a person comes for one session, it's $100. And the first insurance, which is the first person, their own work insurance, pays 80%. We will submit to that insurance company and get $80 back, 80%. Then we'll have to submit to, let's say, the spouse's insurance. That $20 will submit to the spouse. And that will be by mail. It won't be electronic. And we'll get $16 back. So that first session, first day, we'll get $80 back after a period of time. When we get that, we get the statement. We'll have to ask the patient for the statement, and we'll get $16. And then we'll submit to the second insurer by mail. We'll get that back in about a month, maybe a month and a half, and we'll get $16. And of that first session of $100, we then will be able to submit to the auto insurer electronically for $4. And that $4 and what they will require is, even though it's an electronic system, they will ask us to fax them both statements from the first primary and secondary insurer before they'll submit the $4 to us. And we do, and you could imagine when a person's involved in a car accident and has some really, really significant injuries, they're not coming just once. So we have to do that for every session. So the invoicing it's ridiculously complicated. And it's actually, Ontario is one of maybe two jurisdictions in the entire world where you're punished for having a job if you have a car accident. Because typically, when you have a workplace accident, you go through your Workmen's Compensation Board, your WSIB, whatever that agency is, and you only go through that agency. When you have a car accident, Ontario mandates that the first payer is a work insurance. So we have all these employees that are angry that they can't use their work benefits for their shoulder or their arthritis or their chronic conditions for that entire year because it's been used up by the auto insurer. And we have all these employers that are upset at their employees for using their benefits for a car accident because it raises the fees for all these employers. So it's a lose-lose situation.
So who exactly mandated that? Is that an act? Is that legislation that's done that? Or is that the actual financial regulator, Fizzra, that did that?
I think it was, it's been going on for so long in Ontario. I don't, it's been going on for over 30 years. And I think that it's come to a point where people are starting to realize that it doesn't make sense. And I'm hoping people, and there are a lot of agencies now that are starting to sort of speak up and say, we need this to stop. There was a petition recently that, well, it was a letter. It was a letter that was sent to the government. And I believe insurance companies asked for the removal of this. Professional associations asked for the removal of this, and clinic owners. And, it was just a tripartite letter from different industry people just saying, remove employee benefits as the first payee. And I'm hoping that comes to see the light of day, because it would be really beneficial for pretty much everybody in Ontario.
So, Anthony, while doing the research for this episode and going back, 10, 11, 12 years, could really tell that it seemed that the then Liberal-led Wynne government really kind of had it out for physiotherapy in Ontario.
I don't know if I'm able to say things as strongly as you just did, because I do live and work in Ontario. But I will say they definitely did not listen to clinic owners. When we would voice concerns, I remember they would fall on deaf ears. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a period of time when they created a rule based on a suggestion from the insurance industry lobbying that clinics could only invoice once every 31 days. And for years, we would kept asking, please change that to once a month. And it would fall on deaf ears. Now, you can imagine, it sounds sort of logical. Well, they invoice once every 31 days. What's wrong with that? And we would explain, like, most months don't have 31 days. February, it has 29 once every 4 years, but the rest of the time it's got 28 days. We can't invoice in February. We tried to explain the difficulties of not being able to invoice regularly on a schedule, how it adds to administrative burden, how it adds to red tape, how it increases our costs, how our rent is due on the 1st, how difficult it was to keep a steady cash flow. All that fell on deaf ears, and eventually it was fixed, but it took 4.5 years to address that issue.
Well, so when I look at Fizzra today and how, and so they're essentially a brand new regulator. They replaced Fisco, which, we covered Fisco quite a bit back in 2014 and 2015. So they're new, 2019, and they seem dedicated to policing health service providers as opposed to working with your industry to deliver better patient care.
I think Fizzra as industry executive, insurance company executive, insurance industry lobby group executives. They come from the insurance industry. They come from finance industry. The people that oversee market conduct, they're not healthcare providers. So they look at it through their lens, through the lens of the industry they came from. And I think that makes it a bit difficult for them to appreciate what we do and the hurdles we face as service provider. I get it. They come from an industry, the insurance industry, but we definitely feel that they speak to us with an us versus them attitude, which isn't the case, because we're just trying to deliver care to our patients. We're being asked to do more with amounts that don't go as far. And, we're at our breaking point. It's not easy delivering care with all this red tape, with all these hurdles.
What value does Fizzra bring to the health service provider industry?
The idea for the creation of Fizzra as a second redundant licensing and regulatory agency for health service provider, I don't agree with it. The regulated health professionals, the physios, the chiros, the doctors, the social workers, the nurses, all of these who are regulated by their healthcare colleges that invoice through this auto insurance system, they're already highly regulated. They're already honest, and they already have significant things to lose. But then you have other areas of the industry, such as the body shops and things that provide services that are oftentimes more expensive than the healthcare, and they're not licensed or regulated at all. So it seems that, we're talking about things, we're making an effort to talk, but we're redundantly licensing healthcare professionals who have significant investment in their careers and pride in what they do. Like, this is part of their being. They identify as healthcare professionals, and we're not licensing body shops. We're not licensing other areas that are known to be problematic, and maybe not problematic. I don't want to say that, but they're known to be very expensive.
And it comes down to this issue around auto insurance and fraud, coming from accidents. And so it appears that, at least in my mind, that there's a bit of a level of hysteria, at least in the media, around fraud and health service providers.
Yes, absolutely. And there does appear to be a high level of hysteria in the media around fraud and the perpetuation about auto insurance fraud coming from health service providers. And the one thing that I am pleased and happy to see, and this is something that I've already known, is that the Financial Services Regulatory Authority of Ontario's own data has shown that health service provider fraud is virtually non-existent. Health service providers, they were the smart kids, the nice kids. They went to school and they were told to help people. They aren't cheats. They're the doctors, nurses, physios, chiropractors, massage therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists. They value their degree and work too hard to throw it away for nothing. They're honest, and they're already regulated by their health colleges. And of course, there's no group that doesn't have a bad apple here and there. But by and large, as a collective, the data has shown that service provider fraud is virtually non-existent. And, I'm really happy that data is coming out, because it's sort of like undoing the myth that's perpetuated in the marketing that we see when, we need to overregulate because of healthcare fraud. But, the data is the data. The Ontario healthcare providers, people who do work for insurance companies and people who don't do work for insurance companies, they invoiced a total of about $640 million. And the insurance industry states that there's between 1.3 and 1.6 billion dollars in auto insurance fraud. Well, the numbers speak for themselves. And I'm so glad the data has shown that health service provider fraud is virtually non-existent, because without that data, it's very difficult to sort of dispel the myth. And that's the word I'm looking for, because the numbers dispel the myth of health service provider fraud.
Anthony, based on the treatment your industry receives, do you feel like you're being treated with respect?
They call us healthcare heroes. We worked during the pandemic. Clinics were shut down. We paid rent when we asked. Then there was no revenue coming in. We did all this for public safety. And in spite of all that, we're not getting that from the regulator. We don't feel like we're being treated with respect. No, I'm sorry to say, I don't think many providers feel that their interactions have been positive and that they're being treated with respect when somebody tells them they have to have an organizational chart and gives them grief for not having an organizational chart when they're an owner operator. I don't think that's respectful of what their purpose is. Their purpose is patient care.
Anthony, based on what you've been telling us, these are the three things you are immediately asking for. 1, an overall increase in the rate schedule with some process for ongoing adjustments. 2, removal of the requirement to partially bill workplace insurance first before the auto insurer. And 3, remove the redundant regulator from the process, or at least all the red tape.
The most important thing would be to decrease the red tape that we have to deal with this invoicing system and the red tape with the redundant regulation and the fees. With each patient that comes in, the busier you are, the more red tape you have to deal with, the more hurdles you have to jump through, the more difficult it is. Reduction in red tape, removal of redundancies is almost more important than a fee increase. Believe me, a fee increase is important, but to remove the red tape and the hurdles to invoice, and it's astounding what we have to do. It shouldn't cost more. It shouldn't cost so much to send an invoice in terms of time, in terms of human resource time, and it shouldn't be so difficult to send an invoice. That's typically the easiest part. Most companies, they go on QuickBooks, they go and they send it off into the ether, and that's all it took. It literally took 10 seconds. With us, it could take 10 weeks and a lot of touch points.
So who could make that change to remove your industries from Fizzra authority?
I think that's a government decision. I think that's a decision that has to be made at a very high level. I think when you ask somebody if their job is useful, they're always going to say it is. I think that, being more efficient and having financial services focus on financial, focus more on financial things like insurance brokers and mortgage brokers, and what their mandate really is probably better use of their time.
Now, what about Doug Ford and the Progressive Conservatives, the current government in Ontario? I mean, they're known for promising to reduce red tape.
Yeah, actually, and I'm actually grateful. Surprisingly, this is the first time in decades of reaching out to people that I feel that people are listening to our concerns and opinions. We've been reaching out to different people over the decades, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that, I've been particularly grateful for what I've been experiencing so far. I personally have been receiving some attention. I reached out, I got a phone call back. And, it was like, "Hey, Anthony." I said, "Who's this?" "It's Doug Ford here." I'm like, "What?" "Yeah, I got your email." I'm like, "What?" And so I'm going to have my Minister of Finance give you a call. What? And it's like, I was so surprised. And the next thing you know, I'm talking to people and they're listening. And so, I'm hopeful for the first time ever, and I've been doing this since 1996 in other jurisdictions too. But in Ontario, I'm hopeful for the first time ever. I am hopeful that people are hearing, not just me, but other people, about reducing red tape, about just listening to the people on the ground. That there's more to what's happening in healthcare than what industry lobbyists are saying. All I can hope for is that somebody will listen. In the past, it took us 4.5 years for them to change the rule that we could only invoice once every 31 days. And we worked around it and suffered for that little thing needlessly. And I'm just hoping now that that we're all in a better position, because it seems that people are starting to listen.